board, and it's time to start this class. Okay, I am recording. All right, before we go any further, we're in Hosea. And before we go into Hosea, into chapter 3, I want us to look and get some background. And I've kind of mentioned this, but we need to go back and notice in 1 Kings chapter, where was it? I think it's 1 Kings chapter 11. Let's see. Yeah. 1 Kings chapter 11. And I want to start with verse 29. Well, we'll start 28. We're going to start about 1 Kings chapter 11. Yeah, we'll start there, 26. Okay. Now, you've got to understand where we are historically. Okay. The division of the kingdom happened in 975 BC. Hosea wrote 750, somewhere in that neighborhood BC. So we're talking some 200 years beforehand, somewhere. We'll just call it 200 years. And this is what took place. Verse 26 says that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, the Ephrathite of Zerah, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zerah, a widow woman, even he lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Milo and repaired the breaches of the city of David, his father. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, and Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. It came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem that the prophet Ahijah, a Shiloite, found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment. And they were two alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it in 12 pieces. And he said unto Jeroboam, take these 10 pieces, and thus saith the Lord God of Israel, behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. And he shall give one tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. Now, understand something here. You'd have to go back and study Genesis chapter 50. And then also Joshua, when they divided the lands, and where the land of Simeon was. I think it's Simeon. And Simeon was in Benjamin. Simeon, Benjamin, and Judah were all in the same area. Simeon gets absorbed, and so does Benjamin, and they become the tribes of Judah. So when we talk about the 10 tribes and those type of things, there's what he's talking about, those things. Really, yeah. Because they had, and now, so here is going to be the division. Here is a prophecy of the division of the land. Now, this is still when Solomon's going to, because they have forsaken me and worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Malcolm, the god of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in mine eyes, to keep my statutes and my judgment, as did David his father. Howbeit, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince of all the days of his life for David, my servant's sake, whom I chose, because they kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hands, and I will give it to thee, even the 10 tribes. And saith unto his sons, I give thee one tribe, that David my servant may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there. And I will take thee, and thou wilt reign according to all that is in thy soul desireth, shall be king over Israel. If it be that thou wilt hearken to... Now listen to what he's saying in verse number 38. And if it be, and if thou wilt hearken unto all that I command thee, and will walk in my ways, and do that which is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with thee, and build thee a sure house, as I built for David, and I will give Israel unto thee. And I will afflict for this effect the seed of David, but not forever. Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt unto Shushan, king of Egypt, and he was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. All right, so you got the picture. Now let's go. Then we find there is the death of Solomon in the rest of that chapter. Chapter 12, then we find Rehoboam, who is the son of Solomon then. And what's going to take place there? They ask in verse 4, Father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make the grievous service of thy father his heavy yoke which he put upon us. And we will serve thee. All right. And then we find in verse 6 that Rehoboam consulted the old men and stood before Solomon. And then after that, he forsook the counsel, verse 8, of the old men, and took the counsel of the young men. And the young men, verse 10, grown up. And then we find they revolt, verse 16. The northern tribes revolt and did exactly what God had promised. Then look at verse 25. Chapter 12, verse 25. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein. He went out from thence and he built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David, if this people go up. Now understand, you remember what the prophet told Jeroboam. If you do these things and if you'll keep these counsels, then I will make you a sure house. But now notice what he's doing. He said this in his heart, even unto Rehoboam the king, and they will return again unto the Lord, even to Rehoboam the king of Judah. They shall kill me and go again into Rehoboam, king of Judah. And God's already told him that wouldn't happen if he just, do what God said. Wherefore the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. Now, understand something. When the children of Israel came out of Egypt, what did they make?
Calves of gold. Or calves of gold. You send the link to Justin?
Yeah, I did, and he's on. There's another, I guess, Trey is not on. I don't know. I can't. Okay. Let me try something here. Here. All right. I have trouble with his email. Now, where was I?
Jeroboam is afraid that the people will return to him.
That's right.
I get on my phone.
I understand that. Now, he's afraid. Jeroboam's afraid that they'll go back to Rehoboam. God's already told him I don't. Can you text me the Zoom? Number may be. I can join that way. Yeah. There you are. Okay. Now, so here is Rehoboam. Everybody's on board now. Sorry.
Jeroboam doesn't listen to the young men.
All right. So, yeah, Rehoboam's not going to listen. He's listening to the young men, not the.
Rehoboam or Jeroboam?
Rehoboam's not listening to the young men. He's going to take he's listening to the advice of the young men, and they're Rehoboam
Okay.
are going to listen to the advice of the young men. Jeroboam has got the 10 northern tribes.
That's who's afraid they're going to return to, right?
Now, Jeroboam in the northern tribes is afraid they'll go back down to Jerusalem. Rehoboam. Okay. Jeroboam's up north. J, north. Put J in. J's the north. Okay? Now, he's afraid they'll go back down to Jerusalem to worship. They had to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year to worship. And he's afraid they'll go back down there and they won't return unto him. But God's already said, if you'll serve me, that won't be a problem. Okay? Jeroboam north, Rehoboam south.
The Bible told that to Jeroboam.
Yes. He's already told him that. That was in chapter 11. All right, now here's what Jeroboam is going to do. He's going to set up the calves at Dan and Bethel, the golden calves. Now, where did he learn about the golden calves? Well, he was in Egypt, the same place that when Israel came out of Egypt, they set up the golden calf. That's where he learned the same thing, the golden calves. All right, now he's setting one at Dan, that's the northern part, and Bethel is right above Jerusalem. But they won't have to cross that division, that line, that boundary line. They can stay in then Israel, okay? And here, notice what he says, verse 28, whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and he said unto them, it is too much for you to go to Jerusalem. Behold, thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so here are the gods that brought you up, just like Aaron did, made them gods. Here is Jeroboam, and he set one at Dan, or one at Bethel, and put the other in Dan. And these things became a sin for the people who went to worship before the one, even at Dan. And he made an house of high place and made priests of the lowest people, which are not of the sons of Levi. So he's changing who can worship. He's changing the place of worship. So he's changing, if you want to keep it the P there, he's changing the place of worship. He's changing the people of worship. And Jeroboam ordained feast in the 8th month. He changed then, I have to work on one for place, the date of worship. What can we use for a P word there? But anyway, he changed the date by 1 month. Okay, instead of the 7th month, the 15th day. Now he's turned to the 8th month, the 15th day, like unto the feast of Judah. And he offered upon the altar. So he did in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priest. So this is the background then of what Hosea is dealing with. Part that. Okay. Now let's think about. And we mentioned this last week, what's going on with Hosea. Hosea, then, God told Hosea to go marry Gomer. Okay? And she is a whore. Put it real delicately. Okay? And thus, because And that's what we're noticing in chapters 1, 2, and 3. And when we talk about 1, 2, and 3, then we're going, and that sets the tone for the rest of the book. That gets Hosea then, and you can see his attitude, his demur, the way he's just demeanor. Yeah. The whole attitude then is affected by what's taking place in 1, 2, and 3, but it makes effective 4 through 13. Okay. So we got to chapter 3 last week, and we're going to talk about then chapter 3 then. I think that do you understand the background now? Okay. Did you get your people right? Jeroboam? Huh?
I'll rewrite it again. So.
Jeroboam, where's Jeroboam?
He's up north.
All right. Where's Rehoboam?
He's down south.
Rehoboam is Solomon's son. Rehoboam is Solomon's son.
Yes, I have it.
Okay.
Jeroboam was the son of a servant. He fled to Egypt and remained until the death of Solomon.
That's right. That's what God told him. Yeah, that's what God told him.
And Rehoboam has 2 tribes.
Yes.
And Jeroboam's got 2.
That's right. Now you got to understand that in that, you remember when they divided the land that the Levites didn't get any division because you have Ephraim and Manasseh then, the sons of Joseph get part of the tribes. And that gets us back to 12. Okay. The Levites still have a responsibility, and we're going to talk about that in chapter 6, maybe 5 and 6. Yes, they do. We'll talk about that in this because he does that. He refers to Ephraim, and he's talking about the northern tribes. But for the most part, when you see Israel, after the division of that in between Jeroboam and Rehoboam, after that, Israel always refers to the northern tribes. Israel does. And Judah always refers to the 2 tribes, the southern tribes. You seem confused. No, Israel is the north.
That's 10 tribes.
That's 10 tribes. Judah is the south.
Okay, now I'll get it right.
Okay. Got it?
These people stay good.
Okay, if you don't, let's go over it again.
I got everything until you add Manasseh.
Okay, all right. Go back to
12 tribes, 12 children.
let's go. At what point? All right. At what point did you leave me on Manasseh?
Oh, I was fine with everything until you said Manasseh and Ephraim.
Those are
Okay.
the children of Joseph.
We'll go back to Genesis chapter 37 through 50. Okay. Israel has 13 children, 12 boys, 1 girl. All right. Levi does not get a land inheritance when they come into the land. Okay. So we're going to subtract that. That leaves us with 11. Now, how are we going to get back to 12? Well, what we're going to do instead of Joseph, now Joseph then, and goes back to Genesis chapter 50, Israel takes Joseph's 2 sons and makes them his. Okay? And their names are Ephraim and Manasseh. And so we're going to take Ephraim and Manasseh and put them then as sons of Israel.
Instead of Levi and Joseph. They take out Levi and take out Joseph.
Yes.
Joseph doesn't inherit, but his 2 children. Joseph's an old man by the time.
You got, all right, let's go. Just Joseph, his 2 boys, Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay. Because of what took place in Genesis, they're going to get inheritance rather than Joseph, really. Right? So we've got to get back to 12. So we're going to take the Levites and we're going to do something different with the Levites. So that gets us back with Ephraim and Manasseh. That gets us back to 12. 12 children of Israel. Okay? So we're going to divide the land into sections. Okay, this is the book of Joshua. We're going to take that and we're going to divide them then into, I'm going to confuse you again, 9.5 tribes on one side and 2.5 on the other side of the Jordan. Okay?
Manasseh divides itself in half.
Yeah.
What do they do? Half of them go here, half of them
Yes.
go there?
So really, we still got 12 tribes of Israel. Okay?
With the
Have I
12
confused you?
children.
If they have, then let's go.
And you know Israel is Jacob. Okay. And he
Okay.
had 12 children. Okay. Some people don't make that together either.
Yeah. So we got 12 sons, and put Ephraim and Manasseh, take Joseph and Levi out, and we got 12 sons. Okay. So the 10 tribes are going to go with
Jeroboam.
Jeroboam, and sometimes it's called Israel, those 10 tribes, and sometimes they're called Ephraim. Okay. Judah is always Judah. So that's, sometimes it all depends on, and we're going to get into that. I think it's chapter 6, I'm not sure. But one of those two times he's going to call them Ephraim. And he's talking about the Israel. Okay. Now, if you have, think about that. Okay. And after the new year, then at the next class, if you have problems with it, we'll go back over it. Okay.
You get those math.
Because that is the background. And if we don't get that background straight, you don't get that in your mind, then you've got a problem with what's taking place with really from 1 Kings chapter 12, from then on, you have a problem. Okay, that'd be the 1 Kings, then you to Chronicles, because when you get to the end of Chronicles, you're almost at Malachi. Okay, that goes back to the chart that I gave the first. Did you get a chart, Seth?
Yes.
Okay, you might. All right. When we study an overall viewpoint of our Bible, we can go. We go from Genesis, First Chronicles, Second Chronicles, and by the time we get to Second Chronicles, we're at the end of our Bible. And what we've got to do then is put all the prophets. You got the poetry or wisdom literature, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. You've got to put those, and they fall in within that, because here is Moses wrote some of the Psalms. Solomon wrote some of them. David wrote some of the Psalms and those type of things. So they all fit in a certain group there. Then you have the prophets fitting in with that time. Writing prophets and non-writing prophets. And then you also have the kings. And that's what this chart does. And Seth's got it, so you can look at that. And you can, no, I've got it right. You can see the kings of Judah and the kings of Judah, kings of Israel.
You said all the kings of Israel bad.
Yes, all of these over here were bad. Now, they were not always related. These are always related through David. Okay? Judah's always related to David. There's no departure. It's always, you have David, Solomon, Rehoboam, and then it goes on down from there. Okay? And they're all related. That goes back to 2 Samuel chapter 7, that God would not let anything happen. So that comes down, Matthew chapter 1. Jesus is of the lineage of David. That's provable. He is the king then. That's why in 1 Timothy chapter 6, he is the King of kings and the Lord of lords. He had the right to be king because he is the right lineage. And nobody ever questioned that. Nobody in the New Testament ever questioned that Jesus was not of the proper tribe. Okay? So
that's the only reason.
And
Judah, that Israel was like, God called his chosen people.
And I think we get confused sometimes when we're talking about this, and we don't keep this straight in our mind about that, and that's what gets us confused. And so we've got to understand a little history. And it is important. It helps us understand our Bible a little bit. Now, when Hosea is writing to those 10 tribes, 10 northern tribes, Israel. Okay? Because they're going to go into captivity in 722. Judah's going to go into captivity in 606. Judah they don't learn any lessons from Israel. And he's trying to do that. He will get that. And he's trying to tell, you need to watch what's happening to Israel. You need to watch what's happening because you're going in the same direction. So here is Israel then, and that's why he's sending these prophets. You're going to find Hosea and Amos. I really hadn't spent much time with Joel, but those two that we're going to talk about are prophesying to the 10 northern tribes. And then you have some that prophesy after the exile when they come back from Babylonian captivity.
Went into Syrian captivity, and Judah went into
Babylon.
So that means that Daniel was of that lineage. Then he's in the tribes of Judah or Benjamin.
Yes.
One of that.
When we go to Hezekiah, and it says to the children, Hezekiah's children, that some of them would be eunuchs in the king's palaces. That is a prophecy then of, I think, Daniel. Yes. Yes. And he lived then. See, that goes then. All right. They went into captivity in 606. But Jeremiah said they were going to go be in captivity for 70 years, which got them out of captivity in 536 BC. And so that's when they got to come home. And really, I guess what I need to do is get on the board over here, and maybe we'll do that next time, and write a timeline and talk about that. If I'll have to set that up next time, and maybe we can do that. I guess I could do that now, since we're taking this class and doing that. I mean, I can just unplug and I've got enough time, enough thing I can do that. All right. All right. Is everybody totally confused? Okay. All right. So now we're dealing with Hosea and Gomer. Now, in chapter 1, he told us to go and marry Gomer. We find that there were 3 children born to them. Their names are important. We find that he shortens them names to mean something else, and that is also important to understand how God feels towards the children of Israel and those 10 northern tribes. And so chapter 3 then is still talking about how he feels towards those, how his relationship. Now he's going to paint this picture then with Gomer and Hosea, and that's how God feels towards Israel. All right. So let's read this. It's not but 5 verses. He says, "Thus saith the Lord, go yet to love a woman, be it beloved of her friends, and yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord towards the children of Israel, whom look to other gods and love flagons of wine. So I brought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for an homer of barley, and for a half a homer of barley. And I said unto her, thou shalt abide for me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. The children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, without a prince, without a sacrifice, without an image, without an ephod, and without a teraphim. Afterwards shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days." Got a lot of ground to cover here, okay? So, he is told to go buy Gomer again, verse 2. And he buys her for 15 pieces of silver and this homer of barley and a half a homer of barley. So a homer and a half of barley, which would equal to 30 pieces of silver. Interesting. That's right. Where is my notes? On. There it is. Well, no, that's not it. Let me get over here. I've got the wrong, I know where I need to be now. There we are. Exodus 21 and 32. Exodus 21 32. Did I say 21?
Yeah.
Okay. If the ox push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto the master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be restored. So here is the price of a slave. Exodus 21:32. What did I say? It's 21:32. That's an equivalent. Now, when he talks about the 15 pieces of silver plus these other things, then the equivalent is the same price as of the same price that Judas sold Jesus for was 30 pieces of silver. Okay. Then he also gives her fresh clothes, and he returns home with her and sets some guidelines. This is what you're not going to do. And God does that with Israel too. He'd already done that. Now let's go to Exodus chapter 20 and notice what God said a long time ago then. When they come, and this is when the Ten Commandments, this is the Ten Commandments that God gave them. Okay? Exodus chapter 20. I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee, this is verse 2, thee out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage, and thou shalt have no other gods before me. Okay? No other gods. What had Israel done? They had other gods. They were serving them. We read that in 1 Kings chapter 12, I think it was. They served the god of, I remember Ammon and Moab, which are the, yeah. And so that's what they were doing. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. And they were doing that, a likeness of anything in heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or that in the water under the earth. And thou shalt not bow thyself down to them, nor serve them, for the Lord thy God am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keeping my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. That will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But in the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Now they had violated every one of these commandments. Okay, and verse 14, thou shalt not commit adultery. They had committed spiritual adultery. Okay. And so here's what he's doing. This shows then Hosea's love for Gomer. And it talks about, and it is some of the most tender words in the Bible because it's a picture of God for Israel. If they would come back, if they would do these things and come back to God, he would bless them. Okay. But they will not do that. Now, I want to also look verse number 4 and 5. We need to spend some time there, okay? For the children of Israel shall abide many days. Let's see, yes. Many days without a king, without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without a teraphim. All right, now notice, the ephod and the teraphim are ways that the priest would get messages from God. All right. Without a prince, they wouldn't, without a king, without a prince, and without a sacrifice. So we find then that the children of Israel, when they go into captivity, and after they come out of captivity, they have no prince, they have no king, and really, well, it's not then when they don't have sacrifices, but after AD 70. Now we changed from BC to AD. That's when Jerusalem was destroyed. AD 70, when Jerusalem was destroyed, they also destroyed the lineage, the lines of lineage, and they could no longer tell who was the tribe of Levi. That's important because without the tribe of Levi, they can't offer sacrifices. Okay, it took the tribe of Levi to offer sacrifices. They were the ones. Now, understand something. When King Saul, in 1 Samuel chapter 13, tried to offer sacrifices, God condemned him through Samuel because he offered sacrifices and he had no right to. Samuel told him to wait. Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin and he had no right. Now, when we look at the tribe of Levi, we can divide it into two groups. Okay? Levi. Well, for this case, we're just going to divide it into two. We're going to divide it by the sons of Aaron and then all the rest of the tribe of Levi. The sons of Aaron were really the priest. The oldest child, the oldest son of Aaron was the high priest. And his boys then, and his lineage was, and then, so you have Aaron, you have Nadab and Abihu, Ithamar, and Eleazar. They were the priest, and then their sons, Nadab and Abihu had no sons, but these boys had sons, and then their sons would serve as priests. They could offer the sacrifice. The Levites then were to help them. They had other responsibilities too. So when they're without sacrifice, then, without the shedding of blood is no remission. They have no way to get in a right relationship with God. So they're pretty bad shape. And that's why today the Jews really cannot worship God acceptably because they do not know who is the tribe of Levi. So they were without a sacrifice. They have no way to sacrifice to God. They have nothing they can do then. Now, it says, though, afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king. There is then Jesus, who was of the lineage of David, and he is the King of kings, Lord of lords. He's set on the right hand of God. He sits on the right hand of God, and he is the king. And now we have sacrifices. We have all of these things. We have a message from God. We have his word. Okay, we can seek the Lord and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. That latter days refers then to several passages, Isaiah 2, Joel 2, and then Acts chapter 2, verse 17, in the latter days. Okay, and that refers to then the last dispensation. All right. Israel, and I need to talk about this. Then shall the children of Israel return. Understand something, and write these two passages down. Romans chapter 2, 28 and 29. Romans 2, 28 and 29. And Galatians 6, 16. These two passages tell that God has an Israel that is no longer fleshly Israel. You and I today are the Israel of God. And that's, I think, who he's, to me, verse 5 is a prophecy of Christ. All right. Is everybody totally confused? Good. Let's go on to chapter 4 then. Now we're going to deal with how God feels towards Israel. That's the 10 tribes and what he's trying to get them to do. The picture is painted from Hosea and Gomer and what God told them to do. And now we're going to look then at Israel. And this is the 10 tribes. Verse 1 through 3. Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel, for the Lord hath controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, no mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. Then, okay. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood toucheth blood. Therefore shall the land mourn, and every one that dwelleth therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field and with the fowls of the heaven. Yea, the fish of the sea also shall be taken away. So like I said, hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. He's talking to those 10 tribes, those 10 northern tribes. The word controversy. Let me look there. He has charges against them. Let me get to there. Controversy, a lawsuit, then, is what he's talking about. And here are the charges against them. There is no truth. Charge number 2, no mercy. Charge number 3, no knowledge. Now, I think you can, when you look at truth, what is truth? Okay? All right, that's God's word. So we have no knowledge of God's word. Whose failure then, whose responsibility was to teach these people God's word? The Levites. We'll just take it like that. That was their responsibility. Let me give you that. Leviticus chapter 10, verses 10 and 11. Leviticus chapter 10, verses 10 and 11. And Deuteronomy chapter 17, 8 through 11. Deuteronomy 17, 8 through 11. Now, in Leviticus chapter 10, and ye shall put difference between holy and unholy, between unclean and clean, that ye may teach the children of Israel all the statutes which the Lord has spoken unto them by the hand of Moses. Now, the Israel there is talking about all of them. This is before the division of the land. So when Leviticus talks about the children of Israel, he's talking about all of them. It's after that 1 Kings chapter 13 that we notice anytime he mentions Israel, he's talking about the children of those 10 tribes. Okay. All right, then in Deuteronomy chapter 17, Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 8 through 11. If there arise a matter too hard for thee in judgment, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, between stroke and stroke, between matters of controversy within the gates, then shalt thou arise and get thee up into the place which the Lord thy God shall choose, and thou shalt come to the priests and to the Levites and to the judges, and that shall be in those days, and inquire. And they shall show thee the sentence of the judgment. And thou shalt do according to the sentence which they in that place has chosen, the Lord shall choose, shall show thee, and thou shalt observe to do according to all that they inform thee. So here is then the Levites informing them what they need to be doing. That was their responsibility, was to teach these people. And so the mercy then, they were to have mercy with everybody, with their own people, and for God is a God of mercy. So here's the charges that they had then. And then in verse 2, notice, by swearing, lying, killing, and stealing, they're breaking the commandments. Okay? Not to bear false witness. They're not to kill, not to steal. They are not to commit adultery. Okay? They were breaking the commandments with these things. And when they broke these things and they got to such a point, God gave them up. Now, God will get to a point where he'll give up on people. All right? Romans chapter 1. You need to write this passage down. Romans chapter 1, verses 24, 26, and 28. Romans chapter 1, 24 and 26, God gave them up. Romans chapter 1, verse 28, God gave them over to a reprobate mind. It means the same thing. All right. Verses 4 and 5. Let no man strive, reprove another, for thy people are as they that strive with the priest. Therefore shalt thou fall in the day, and the prophets shall also fall with thee in the night, and I will destroy thy mother. So here are people, then they're attacking the priest. All right. The priests are correct. And you'll find that that's what they did to the Old Testament prophets. They stoned them. Jeremiah was thrown into a miry pit, and they mistreated them. And he says, you strive with the priest then. They were trying to teach the children of Israel. Amos will be told, you go back south and preach down there. We don't want you up here in this northern land. You go down. And so they were mistreating the prophets. Let no man strive and reprove another, for thy people are as they that strive with the priest. All right. Therefore shalt thou fall in the day. The prophet also shall fall with thee in the night. And so they had departed from God. They were no longer allowing the priest to teach God's word. And so they all were going to fall. You have a responsibility. If you're going to preach, you have a responsibility to preach the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You have a responsibility to preach on certain subjects that some do not like. It can be immodest apparel. It can be drinking alcohol. It can be tobacco use. It can be fornicating. It can be a lot of things. People don't like those. Don't want you to preach on those things. But as a responsibility as a preacher to preach the truth, you've got to preach those subjects. It may cost you something, but you've got to preach those truths. Sometimes it has cost preachers their job. But it's got to be done. And here is the warning. Here is the idea then from the Old Testament of what's going to take place. God doesn't want it that way, but that's what's going to happen sometimes. But you've got to save yourself as a preacher. And you've got to preach those things. And sometimes it's hard to preach those things. Look at verse 6. All right, this is one of your memory verses. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou should be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. They were destroyed because they were not allowing the priest to teach and preach the truth, and they did not want it to, and the Levites, the priests, were not doing it. Okay? So God said, you're destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And here's the information. You have it before you, but you're not studying. All right, that's the importance then of preachers. Then teaching people need to study. But sometimes we need to teach people how to study. Study. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15. Study to show thyself approved. John chapter 5 and verse 39. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. Acts chapter 17 and verse 11. These are more noble than those of Thessalonica, that they received the word with all readiness of mind. Search the scriptures daily, whether those things were so. So here is the idea of knowledge then. And because they have rejected knowledge, then, okay, they didn't want it. And because I will also reject thee. So God was rejecting them because they rejected knowledge. That thou should be no more a priest to me. He's talking about the whole country that way. And And seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. Now here's the consequences. I will also forget thy children. Because you didn't want this taught, you didn't allow this to be taught, then I'm going to forget your children. Your children are going to go away into apostasy. And that's what's going to take place. Hosea then is prophesying 722 BC when they would go into captivity. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pleasant. All right. That's got us there. We'll take up verse 7 through 10 next. 1:10, 17. All right. And if you got any questions about, think about those things. And if you want to go over that history part there, we can do that again. All right. Thank y'all.